Welcome into another episode of Respect Her Game. I'm Laura Stickles. It's Annabelle Hasselback joining me today. We've got a very football-themed episode because the NFL literally starts today, the day this episode comes out. It's Chiefs-Ravens, Thursday Night Football. Week 1 of college football was this past weekend, and we have Charean Williams coming on the show in about 15 minutes or so, who's been covering the NFL for 30 years. We talk all about her journey to get to where she is, what it's like to cover the NFL and be one of the first women in the industry, and also some of her favorite storylines coming into this season. So I'm looking forward for all of you guys getting to hear that, because I think it was one of my favorite conversations that I've had so far during this show. But Annabelle, I think we got to kick things off with BC football. They go down to Florida State, beat the number 10 ranked Seminoles 28-13 on the road, and get the Bill O'Brien era kicked off in upset fashion. So what was your reaction to watching that game as an alum?
Well, I love that little intro you just did. It just gassed me up. And it's like 7 in the morning here in Seattle. So thank you for that. I could listen to that like on a remix, like with a little beat in the back, beating number 10. That was awesome.
Oh, we should do that. We can do a TikTok segment with that.
Yeah. Like, how much time do you have? I can't even tell you how much joy that win brought me, just as now a BC alum, but just even to watch Boston College football's reaction to the win, and also all the students on campus at BC. I was texting my sister like, oh my gosh, like, what's campus like right now? How is it going? And she wasn't responding, and I was kind of mad. But then she texted me early in the morning the next day. She's like, hey, like, I had a 5 a.m. workout, like, and then I had like lacrosse training. So I was asleep after the game. But no, this is just so cool for Boston College. And I think what was fun for me to watch was this just really looked like a different BC team than I had seen really in the last 4 years that I was a student there. There was so much hype on the field, on the sideline. There was so much aggression. Like, shout out to Ozzie Trapillo, local Norwell Mass guy, and the rest of the O-line, like pushing the running backs through the play, trying to get just those extra inches. You could just see that there was clearly something and a different energy about this BC football team. And then, yeah, like these videos are absolutely insane. These are the mods at Boston College. My senior year roommates and I were texting, oh my gosh, imagine being in the mods at BC right now. We're so jealous of them, but just so cool and so proud to be an Eagle. Huge things coming for this team. I'm so excited, and really just shout out to those guys on the team because they've worked really hard this summer, really hard, all off season, and all eyes were on them, especially with this new head coach. So shout out to Boston College football. So awesome.
I agree with everything you're saying. First of all, nothing compares to the high you get after your college football team winning. It like carries you through the full week. You feel great for the full week. But same thing with like the disappointment when a season or a game doesn't go the way you want. Like, that can be crushing. So I'm so happy for you that it seems like, hopefully this isn't a wild overreaction to week 1, but I'm so happy for you that hopefully you get a really competitive football team this year. But I completely agree with everything that you're saying football-wise as well, because I haven't watched a lot of BC football in the past, although I've heard a lot of the things that have been said about it. But I did tune in for the second half of this game when I checked the score, and every single time that I thought to myself, ooh, like the defense really needs to come up with a stop here, they came through, they did that. And then also your quarterback, Thomas Castellanos, I knew on the broadcast, they were saying like, oh yeah, he wasn't as great of a pocket passer last year. It doesn't seem like that's the case this year. Like, he seemed very comfortable in the pocket. He was connecting with his receivers when he needed to. It just feels like you guys have a really complete football team, and credit to Bill O'Brien for really just taking the reins and making the most with what he has in his first year as head coach. I think BC is off to hopefully a bright future with him at the helm.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's going to happen. It's our year. I remember last year we had the path, and it was like our path to the ACC championship, and it was kind of a thing for a little bit, but so excited about this. And you're right, just even with Tommy and you had football coach Bill O'Brien, but I would just say like the poise as well, as much as that like aggression in the game, the poise, it was getting heated. FSU was getting mad. So somebody shoved somebody, and number 4, Neto, like instead of, coming at the guy who shoved him, I think it was an O lineman, he like hit the gritty. He was like, let me step away and I'm going to hit the gritty. And it was awesome because that was also a point in the game when the game wasn't solidified. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about. Like, okay, they need to come up with a big stop, and they did. And to respond in that way, I don't think maybe teams in the past would have done that. Maybe they would have retaliated differently. So no stupid penalties. I think they had like close to one penalty in this game. So just like proud to be an Eagle. And you're right, it is so exciting watching your college team play. I feel like regardless of whatever point in your life you're at, I walked into the facility the next morning and literally everyone made a comment to me about it, and I was like, this is awesome, like I feel so special with Boston College. So yeah, and this photo, this is the mods at BC, all these kids gathered around to watch the game. I think the caption on this was like the Bill O'Brien effect. And this is not something you would have seen last year or really in my last 4 years at Boston College. And even at the off-campus houses, kids bringing their TVs out onto the porches and watching the game from there. This is just, it's so cool for school spirit. It's so cool for camaraderie. And it's just more fun to go to school when you're all united under one really exciting game day.
I like what you said about the Bill O'Brien effect. Like, immediately having Bill O'Brien as the Eagles head coach, it completely legitimizes that program in college football as well. Not only does it hype up the students, but it's also great for recruiting. I mean, think about all of the high school students that hear that Bill O'Brien is the head coach and they're like, oh, I want to play under that guy, especially when you're in high school. I think with transfers, it's a little bit different because they kind of have a sense for the program that they want to go to after already playing college football. But especially for high school kids, when it's like they still are trying to figure out what they want in a school and they hear that Boston College is coached by Bill O'Brien, that's a huge selling point for them. And something that you've
Laura,
heard...
they're going to hire you in the recruiting office. Be careful.
Well, that's what I'm about to do.
Like, we need to hire that girl to go on like our campus tours.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, like, you have been a student athlete at Boston College. And in the past, I mean, you hear this about a lot of schools all the time. Like, I remember even, Stanford had that run when I was at school where they were really good for a while. But before that, they always said, oh, you can't win at Stanford. And you hear that all of the time at various different universities. Like, oh, you can't win at this school. You can't win at this school. And you hear that about Boston College, too. And now with Bill O'Brien there, you start to think like, okay, maybe Boston College has some potential here. So I'm curious for you, as a former student athlete there, what will it take for Boston College to be a winning college football program?
Man, that is so good. Well, clearly, number one, like, listen to coach. Listen to your leaders, buy in. And I think that's just the big thing. Something I've been super impressed with honestly, since the moment Bill O'Brien got on campus was his appreciation and commitment to make this Boston College football team like completely embody what BC is. Like, men and women for others, get involved, be a part of the community, have this poise about you, and like really buy into that BC football player. And that's something that I've been super impressed with, whether it's service outside the field or just their hard work on the field. So I think listen to your leaders. Clearly, we're doing something right just here in game one. And just believe in yourself. It's fun to be an Eagle. Like, soak it in. I loved being a student athlete there at Boston College. And I mean, just poise. Like, that was a big thing that I know they talked about in the off season, was like, hey, we can't have any careless errors. We can't be shooting ourselves in the foot. Like, how do we take care of penalties? And so just doing that and playing solid football, simple football. One of the messages that coach was saying was just do your job and like stay in the moment. And I said on another show last weekend, it sounds a lot like some Patriots things that we've heard
that's
before.
That's the Patriot way. But this is New England. This is the place for it, right?
But listen, Boston is a city of champions, and like this just feels like a new era. And I mean, there were videos, you saw those videos that we just played of the students singing all over campus. And there was one video on the buses, the ComAv buses, kids are like chanting Bill O'Brien. And I think the caption on that one was like, culture matters. And so I would just say, like, be a BC Eagle and we're good.
Well, BC, they have an interesting schedule coming up. Next week, they have an FCS school in Duquesne. And then the week after that, they're playing number 9 ranked Missouri. So they're going to get another test here pretty soon.
I will say my best college football memory of my entire 4 years at BC was against Missouri. We beat them my sophomore year. And this is my claim to fame, okay? I was the first person on the field. I was the first fan that stormed the field. I climbed up on the little bleacher thing, did like a left foot, right foot jump kind of thing, definitely could have sprained my ankle. I was borderline like, I'm going to get in so much trouble with my team. This could be bad if I get hurt. But that was my claim to fame. We beat Missouri. I stormed the field. I definitely thought that I was the first person in the end zone.
What's your tip for any college students out there that want to be the first one on the field? What's your tip for how to do it?
You got to be in the front row before the fourth quarter. Like, that's a no-brainer. And then you just got to boss up and do it. If it takes an elbow shove, it takes an elbow shove. Thankfully, at BC, we have a lot of nice people. Okay. There were a lot of people that stormed the field, but like, it wasn't everyone on campus. So I had some space. But yeah, just go for it. I mean, why not? And there was a game too, I think that same year, when we stormed the field and like, it wasn't even the end of the game. I think the refs were like, what are you guys doing? But if you're excited and you're with your fan zone, just go for it, even if it's not, Alabama or Clemson. For us it was Missouri, but that was big enough. So it was super fun, and it's a memory I'll always have.
Like I said, nothing feels as good as college football. So before we move on, we're going to play a couple of the sights and sounds from after the BC game, from in the locker room and around campus.
Hey, this is the first one of many.
Yes,
but
sir.
the game ball for his first wins are
I can't let you go, baby. I just want to tell you that. No. All of my friends say you better take care. 'Cause that man is trouble, you best beware. And go deep down, I know.
Vibes are good.
Oh my gosh. It just makes me so happy because those kids, like, I'm so happy for those kids and those students at BC. That is like the most fun thing ever, to just share in that experience with the other college kids. And props to the people that are behind that account. I think it's BC Football Fans and the WZBC radio, Boston College, for just promoting the game. And you can really tell, like, everyone on campus is bought in, and this is going to be a really fun year for the Eagles.
I mean, I'm bought in, and I didn't even go to BC, but you'll see me on the hill this year.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
All right. Well, we're going to transition here, but AB, listen to this transition. I've been working on this since we chatted last night. You know who doesn't play football but can throw a really good stiff arm? Ilohna Maher.
Yes. Yes, that was good. Kind of rhymed.
Yeah.
Kind of rhymed.
It does. Anyways, okay. So Ilohna Maher, she was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. It's a new digital issue that came out last Wednesday. This was the second digital issue that Sports Illustrated has done. And the digital issue releases around major cultural and entertainment moments. And I mean, I couldn't think of a better person to embody what's a major entertainment and cultural moment, considering everything that she did at the Olympics for body positivity, and with her TikTok and everything that she did to truly like entertain us from the Olympic Village. I mean, I'm so glad that she had this opportunity to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated and just represent like tons of women that don't normally get to see themselves on a platform like that.
Yeah, she's hilarious. I literally love her. And I think what's cool is what you said, like, that's not really what we've seen from Sports Illustrated before, especially like just having an Olympic athlete who clearly is like built. And I think that's something that's been a huge part of her conversation, is like, hey, strong can be really beautiful. And I love how she talks about it. She's not, she speaks very highly of herself. She's like, man, I look really good. Like, I watched her vlog that she did in that photo shoot, and she kept being like, oh my gosh, like, these look awesome. But she was also like, hey, like, I don't know, like, it is uncomfortable putting on a swimsuit and I'm being photographed. Like, we'll see how this goes. Not really sure. But she was like, yeah, I look good. And I liked her authenticity in that. And I think that's why a lot of people are wanting to follow her. I think she has, like, I wrote down, she's 3.8 million followers. Okay, that's a lot of followers, and that's pretty new. And so, like you said, yeah, I just think it's really cool to see her authenticity in it. And it's fun when someone's being so real, and it might, to some people, come across as, oh, she just said she looks really good. Well, I'm like, yeah, like, you do, girl. Like,
it's good to have confidence.
Yes, and so it's kind of like, yeah, she's no filter, in a good way, meaning like there's no BS. You're just straight up what you're saying. And yeah, she's just awesome and super, super happy to cheer her on through this.
I heard her do an interview where she talked about having broad shoulders and how people would tell her like, oh, her shoulders look really masculine. But she was like, no, like I like my broad shoulders. That's what that's what makes me a really good rugby player. That's what makes me a really good athlete. And it reminded me of, when I was in college and when I was an athlete. It's like when I was an athlete, it was the most confident that I ever was in my body. Like a lot of the things that I am less confident with in myself or that I don't love about myself are the things that make me a good athlete. It's like, maybe I don't feel comfortable with the way my legs look, but that's why I'm a fast rower. It's stuff like that. And she talks about that, and she's talked about the impact that sports has made on her and how it's built her confidence. I mean, she truly has range because, like you said, she is hilarious, but she can also flip the switch and talk about some really serious topics too.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think a lot of female athletes have experienced this with just having a different physique than what's normally portrayed as like the model, right? And like what society is saying, oh, this is really pretty and attractive and feminine. She talks a lot about that, how people are always coming at her for being so masculine and how she does little things like lipstick to feel feminine. I think she said she wears lipstick during, I actually wrote this quote down because I thought it was just so awesome. I was looking into her brand deals with her red lipstick, and this is something that she wears during games.
Yes.
And she said, I wear Maybelline Super Stay Matte Ink when I'm playing rugby. That's the name of a lipstick for people who don't know. It's genuinely the one lipstick that stays on when I have my mouth guard in and when I'm tackling and rubbing up against people. That's like, I saw the words tackling and matte stay ink, like lipstick, in the same sentence. And I was like, this girl is awesome. And I think one of the best things about female sports, at least in my experience, was like when someone kind of looks really cute and maybe has a bow in their hair or just like looks feminine in a way, but then they're an absolute beast on the field. I think that's one of the most baller things you can do. So yeah, just like so cool for her. And everyone should go watch the vlog that she did, the behind the scenes of the Sports Illustrated shoot. You'll see, what she had for breakfast, like full protein meal. She was like, yeah, let's go. She did some chin-ups before she got off the boat on the beach. Like, this girl is a true beast and just so enjoyable to watch.
And she'll be on Dancing with the Stars. We just found out. Our producer, Carolyn, told me before we got on this episode, she's going to be on Dancing with the Stars along with Steven Netorozic, who is the pommel horse guy from Worcester. And apparently it's a big New England theme because Danny Amendola will be on Dancing with the Stars as well. So I don't know how she's going to do. I mean, I always think of Dancing with the Stars as being great for gymnasts, but I mean, she's clearly very athletic, and I'm excited to see how she does. But no, that'll be a lot of fun. I'm definitely probably going to tune into this season.
Laura, if you got asked to be on Dancing with the Stars, 1, would you say yes? And 2, what like type of dance would you be best at? I'm so curious.
Okay, it's funny you bring this up. I would love to be on Dancing with the Stars.
Okay.
I'm not a star.
Careful
I'm not
what you say. Someone might see this someday.
I'm not actually a star, so I think that's the number one issue. So I feel comfortable saying this.
Yes, you are.
But my problem with dancing is that, well, one, I'm truly not that good at it, but 2, I have a really hard time with choreography. Like, I cannot remember anything. If you put me in a workout class and when the instructor's like, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and then you're going to do this, I'm like, what? Like, you do what? Like, I have a really hard time with choreography, so I don't know how I would do, but I mean, like, come on. I like to take good opportunities, and then someone was like, Laura, do you want to be on Dancing with the Stars? I do it. What would you do? Would you do it? And what would your dance be?
Yeah, I should have thought about before I asked you, because then you would have to turn it back on me. No, I would also do it. I feel like it's an opportunity you can't pass down. And I can imagine for a lot of these athletes too, like, usually, right? Like sometimes you go full into sports, you go full into the arts. Those are like 2 different things. Usually people who are playing at the highest level of sports and the highest level of dance or music can't do both, right? Because you're at such an elite level. So I can imagine some of these athletes probably be like, oh my gosh, like I haven't danced since, kindergarten when I did tap kind of thing. So I can imagine for them, they'll probably have that moment of hesitation. But I think just like you, if I had the opportunity, I would have to take it. I'd have to take it. And I don't know. I think something, a little bit of everything. I don't have a skill in dance or one specific type of dance that I'm good at. So anything, hit me with anything.
I love it. We're out here to try new things. All right. Well, it's time for Charean Williams, Mother Football, which I just think is such an incredible nickname. Could you imagine somebody nicknaming you Mother Football, Annabelle?
No, it's baller. It's so baller.
It's truly amazing.
I kind of want to steal it and name my mom that, because my sweet mom is at football has been her life. So maybe I'll start calling my mom that.
Well, we've got Charean Williams, Mother Football, coming on here in just about a minute. She's been covering the NFL for 30 years. She's truly a delight to talk to. So I'm excited for you guys to get to hear this conversation, and I know that you're going to enjoy this one. Well, we have the perfect guest on for week 1 of the NFL season. It's Charean Williams. She's been covering the NFL now for 30 seasons, often referred to as Mother Football, and that's exactly where I want to start this. When was the first time that somebody called you that?
Well, it was my former coworker, Clarence Hill of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and it's kind of a funny story. We were in the Cowboys press room over at their old practice facility, and it's a really small facility, and everybody's TVs are on, everybody's talking about baseball and screaming about baseball, and finally I had had enough, and I said, this is not a baseball press room, this is a football press room. Stop the baseball talk, I'm trying to work. And Clarence said, who do you think you are, Mother Football? And everyone just burst into laughter. So it kind of stuck after that. Randy Galloway, who was a fairly famous radio broadcaster here, had a sports talk radio show, picked it up, and everybody credits Randy for giving it to me because he said it so much on the radio, but it was actually Clarence who gave it to me, and gets kind of peeved when people credit Randy for it. But it was Clarence Hill who tabbed me Mother Football, and it's kind of stuck. I kind of like it.
Oh, I love it. I mean, it's a perfect nickname for one of the first women who's really been able to cover this league. I mean, I think it has a double meaning to it, right? Like it's a really special nickname. It's an honor, honestly. Something that I read about you, Charean, is that you knew that you wanted to cover the NFL when you were in second grade. Now, when I was in second grade, I think I was still in my garbage truck phase where I really wanted to be driving a garbage truck. I don't even think that I knew that you could cover sports in second grade. So how was it that you identified this as a career for yourself?
Well, I was a huge Cowboys fan, and I would wear all my Cowboys stuff to school. You know, most girls wore the dresses. I wore the Cowboys jerseys and the Cowboys T-shirts and sweatshirts and all that sort of stuff most of the time. So everyone knew I was a big Cowboys fan. And so my teacher, Cindy Bridges, in second grade, asked me, or I asked her how far it was to Dallas. And she said, well, it's about 5 hours. It's 300 miles. I grew up near the Houston area in Beaumont. And she said, well, why do you want to know? And I said, I'm going to marry Roger Staubach, thinking, I thought teachers were a little smarter than this. Doesn't she know that's what I'm going to do? Went back to what I was doing, whatever that was. And so, you know, at that time, newspapers did human interest stories. So a writer named Joe Cody from our local paper, the Beaumont Enterprise, came out and wrote a story on the Cowboys' youngest fan. That's what the headline was. So I was 8 years old, and I mentioned in the article not only that I wanted to marry Roger Staubach, but that I wanted to cover the Cowboys for my job. And, you know, I had no idea that girls didn't do this. It's just what I wanted to do. And so I would practice. I would use, at that time, we had big old microset recorders. And so I would practice my interviews with my sister. She was the interview subject. And I would climb up on my A-frame swing set that was metal and pull off the rubber cap. And I used it to do my play-by-play because it reverberated through the metal. But really, that's when I started really preparing for, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to go do it, whatever that means. So, I'm thankful to all the women who paved the way for me to get this opportunity, and hopefully I've done the same for some younger women coming up in the profession.
So for our New England fans that don't know, Roger Staubach was the quarterback for the Cowboys back in the 70s. So I like I like how at the time you hadn't quite figured out you don't want to get too close to your subjects yet. That's
exactly.
Awesome. What did your friends think of your passion for football?
Um, Most of them were Cowboys fans anyway, but I became the Cowboys expert. Yeah, I remember we were going to a band concert. It was a night concert. My parents were with me, and these two boys are arguing at the door over what number Leroy Jordan is, and they're arguing back and forth. And they go, "Hey, there's Charean." My mom tells this story, and I do remember it because my mom's told it so many times. But she said, "Hey, there's Charean. She'll know the answer to this. Charean, what number is Leroy Jordan?" I said, 55. And I just kept walking, like, who doesn't know he's 55? And my mom, they stood back to see what the boy's reaction was going to be. I mean, I didn't care, but one of the boys paid the other boy $1. My mom says, they just took your word for it, that he was number 55. And I said, well, was I wrong? So I wasn't wrong. So I was kind of the Cowboys expert in school. I really did study it. I mean, I would pick these teams. I would pick like the all Texas team, and I would just really study everything, and everything in my bedroom was Cowboys and NFL stuff. So I really was, I think, even though sometimes I didn't know it, I was preparing to do this in my younger days. So I think that served me well leading up to what I've become now.
Well, I can tell by talking to you, one, you were an incredible Cowboys fan, but you were also you have a love for the game. You have a love for the X's and O's and the actual game of football. Why do you love the game so much?
Well, I think when you grow up in Texas, it's kind of a fabric of our state. We grew up going to A&M Texas game on Thanksgiving or the Cowboys game on Thanksgiving. That's what you did. So I've hardly ever celebrated Thanksgiving on a Thursday, on Thanksgiving Day. That's not our Thanksgiving Day. It's usually Wednesday night or Friday day or Friday night, but some other time in the calendar is when our Thanksgiving is. So you just grow up with football, and the boys in my neighborhood, they played football, and they kind of taught me the game and the plays and all those sorts of things. And then you just study it and ask questions and figure things out that you don't know because you didn't play the game. And, I have asked an awful lot of questions to coaches and others about specific things. What does a play call mean? And what's the route tree look like? And all those things that, if you played those positions, played the game, you know what those things are. So you figure all those things out, but it does take a lot of study. I mean, it's not like you just jump into this and go, I want to cover football. Like, you've got to know football to cover football. So it has been a lifelong passion of mine. And I don't just talk about the people. I do understand the game and understand what they're trying to do. And I can see plays on the field now. I know it well enough that I can sometimes tell you what's going to happen, what the play is. I did it in a college game the other day. I was sitting in the stands, and I think people were they didn't know who I was, and kind of amazed that I was telling them what was wrong with the offense and why it wasn't operating like it should be operating. But it does take a lot of time, a lot of studying to if this is what you want to do, to figure out the game and know the game inside and out. But it is a passion. It is a love. You are right. And I just don't think you can do anything in life, whatever that is, whatever your job is. I just don't think you can do it well if you don't have that passion and you don't have that love for it. Unfortunately, for me, that this is what I love and have a passion for. And I don't know that I've ever worked a day in my life.
Well, I love that you bring up the fact that you haven't played the game. And something for me is that I always like to use my natural curiosity, especially when I'm covering sports like football or sports like hockey that I haven't played myself, because I do think that's almost a sort of advantage even over people that have played the game and take a lot of the things that they know for granted, when a lot of people that are watching the games haven't been in their shoes. They actually haven't played the game themselves. So you can use it to your advantage, and there's so much to learn. That's something also that I love about sports, is it's so much that you can learn, so much that you can grow in. I love it. I love that I can hear your passion in your voice. It's amazing. Something that I'm really curious about too is what it was like for you. You were one of the first women that was covering the NFL. So what was it like for you as you started to see more women enter the field?
Well, it was really cool because I was the first for a really long time. And it was a big deal when I went in the Buccaneers locker room in 1994 on a daily basis, and was there every day. And the first Sage Steele also was working for a TV station, and she sometimes showed up. So occasionally there were two of us, but on a daily basis, I was it, and in that locker room every day, and so it didn't faze me. Like, it's just something that you accept. This is what you want to do, and again, it goes back to, I think, that love and passion for it, that you just become one of the boys, so to speak, and you fit in. And a lot of them are like my brothers now that I work with the Bucks, and now that when I worked with the Cowboys, and some of the NFL writers that I've worked with for a long time, I think consider them almost like family, because that's what it is, because you see the same faces over and over and over again. But it is really cool now to see more women in the profession. And when you go in a locker room, when you show up in the press box, you're not the only one. So I think that's a really cool thing that, hopefully I've paved the way for some of them to be able to do this, or at least showed that it could be done if this is what they wanted to do. And I see a lot of the same love and same passion from the women in the locker rooms who are younger than me. So that's exciting, I think, from where we've come and how things have changed. And now players and coaches expect to see women covering the NFL, which, like I said, at the time was a really big deal. And they didn't see women come into the locker room, so it was different. So it's been a big change over my 30 years covering the NFL, and all for the better. And it's I like where we are right now, and we're not talking about who was first. We're talking about who's next, and there are a lot of next coming along.
So you started covering the NFL back in 1994, and you said earlier in this discussion that there were some women that you felt paved the way for you. Who were some of those people?
Well, I think you start with Melissa Ludke, who had to sue. She worked at SI at the time and was denied entry into the press box or clubhouses at the World Series. And Sports Illustrated sued, and they said, yes, you can't deny women entry into clubhouses. If the men go in, the women have to go in as well. So you look at, people like that, and Lisa Olson and Leslie Visser, and, those are kind of the people who and I know I'm probably missing some who helped in this, but there are many, many more who came up, who really paved the way for me, that I look up to and see them as an inspiration, and got phone calls. And Christine Brennan, who works for USA Today, I'll never forget. I had an incident after a Texas A&M Arkansas game with the Arkansas not letting me into the locker room. The men went in, and I stood outside, and they promised to bring me out, the quarterback and the coach, after the men were done with their interviews, and they never did. They forgot about me. And I heard from Christine Brennan, and she helped, make a statement that this isn't how it should be, and we can't tolerate this. And so very appreciative to all of them and what they've done for much harder times than I went through. And I had some of those instances, but not nearly as much as what they did, more in the 80s and 70s, and really getting us to where we are now. So very appreciative to all of them.
I can only imagine how frustrating a situation like that would have been, and I'm glad that you had Christine Brennan there to kind of help you through that. But how were you able to push through moments like that? Because I can imagine it would have been really frustrating.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really helped, I talk about, some of the writers being friends and considering them sort of brothers, family. In that particular instance, Kurt Bowles, who's now with the Houston Chronicle, at the time was with the Austin American Statesman, came out of the locker room and he said, Charean, what are you doing out here? And I said, well, I'm waiting for Quinn Grovey and Ken Hatfield to come give me interviews. And he said, well, there's a back entrance. They're gone. And, I'm such a young reporter, like I didn't know if I wanted to cry or throw up, or probably a little bit of both. And he knew that. He put his arm around me. He says, hey, I got both guys. I got interviews with both in group setting. I'll give you all the quotes. And so I think it's those types of things. My first year covering the Buccaneers, on Mondays were very uncomfortable because their locker room at their old training facility was little, probably smaller than my house. I mean, it was tiny. And when the doors open up, whoever designed this was an idiot. But doors open up, and the shower area, which has no doors or anything on it, was right in front of you. Like, you could see into it. So it's a very uncomfortable experience because there's not very much room, and the guys are all stinky and they're moving around. They're trying to get home on this is just on Mondays because we had interviews after practice. So they're trying to get out of there. And then the shower area, the guys are showering right there. So it was all just a bad scene. So I asked the PR guys, I said, hey, I said, I have a favor to ask. I said, this is very uncomfortable on Mondays to come in here with, the shower right there, and the guy's stinky, and they're trying to get out of here, and there's no room, and you're trying to find the guys you want to interview. I said, is there any way I can just stand out in the hall and you can bring guys out? And the men in the media said, hey, if Charean's not going in, we're not going in. We'll stand outside the locker room together on Mondays, and we'll tell you who we want, and you can bring them out. And I think that was the first time I thought, you know what, I'm respected. Like, they respect me and know I'm here to do a job and do a good job, and that I want to be good at this. And so that was really pretty clear to me that I was going to be okay in doing this. So that meant a lot, and I've had a lot of those experiences, and I think it's frankly, my peers, mostly male, who have had my back, and that has meant the most to me, I think, in my career.
I think that's also just a testament to the respect that you've earned and the job that you've done covering the NFL. I mean, you get that kind of respect by doing a good job, by showing up every day, and by carrying yourself the right way. And that's a really special story. And I still have a lot of young women that are asking me how I navigate locker room situations, because it is really complicated. And I could even imagine back then how much more challenging it was. But this kind of leads me into my next question for you. We talk a lot about sports television on this podcast and what it takes to break into the sports TV industry. But I'd love for your advice for a young writer out there that wants to get into this. What's something that you would tell them?
Well, when I first got into it, you had a decision to make. You either wrote or you went into broadcasting, and there really was kind of you didn't do both. We didn't have the internet at the time, obviously, and so there was only one thing you had to be good at. Well, now I think the main thing is to be good at a lot of things. So you need to be good at the broadcasting part of it. You need to be good at the writing part of it, which I still think is the core of anything. Is to be able to write. Even if you're on TV, you have to be able to write as well as talk. And then there's, you have to be good behind the camera, and you have to be good on social media and all those other things that go into it that I never had to deal with until later in my career. So really was a disadvantage when all of this came in because I didn't know any of it. Fortunately, when I was at Texas A&M, I had worked for not only the school newspaper, the Battalion, but I'd also worked for the TV station KMU, and I was a sports anchor on there. And so I think that helped me for the broadcasting part of it, which now I do at least once a week on PFT Live on Peacock. So you do have to be good at multiple things. You can't just say, I'm going to go into broadcasting. This is what I want to do. All I have to do is be able to speak well. I still think you have to do the writing part of it. If you're writing, you're still going to be in front of the camera more than likely at some point. You're still going to be on the radio. You're still going to be doing podcasts. So you have to be able to do multiple things to be good in this business now. And I think that's, to me, is the biggest way that this business has changed, is just the crossover, that you have to be good at so many things to be good at what you're doing.
I completely agree with that. So I actually started my career as a writer. I started at the Stanford Daily. I was a sports writer there for a couple of years. Then I was the managing editor of the section. And I really think that having that experience just really helped me hone in on my storytelling and understanding, like, what is the story that I'm telling? And then I actually moved to Alaska and I wrote for a local newspaper up there for a year. And truly, like, you're focusing on the stories there, especially because when you're covering local high school prep sports, especially in Alaska, like, you don't have the access to information that you do when you're covering the NFL or college football. You don't have stats everywhere. So you really have to focus on what was the story of that game and write about it. And I mean, that carries over into everything. I actually have just kind of a question about that, because the biggest thing for me with my writing, especially when I was starting out, and I think this is a big hurdle for a lot of young writers, is dealing with the pressure of a deadline. So for anybody that's struggling with that, what's your advice?
Yeah, I do think that's the biggest thing. I think, and with the newspaper, it was even more of a true deadline. The internet's a little bit different, and TV now is kind of that newspaper deadline pressure that we used to have. But yeah, you got to be able to do it. You got to be able to do it fast and figure out what the storyline is going in, and your story of figuring out what the storyline is. I think that's the big deal on it. Nowadays people have seen the game. Back in, when I was young, Monday Night Football had the halftime show, and they had highlights around the league, and you stayed up for them. My parents let me stay up at least through halftime. So I got to see the halftime highlights because you got to see all the games, and then I probably had to go to bed. But, nowadays everybody's seen the game. Everybody's seen the highlights. They know what happened. When they go on to read your story, they want you to give them something that they haven't seen just watching the game. What is it that stood out that nobody knows without reading your story? Give them something that they don't know. And so I think that learning that and learning to do it in a high pressure, tense situation of I've got to get this now, my deadline is in 10 minutes, it is probably the hardest part of the job and the biggest learning curve that you'll have coming out if this is what you want to do. But once you figure those two things out, what is the story? What is something that the reader didn't know that I told them in this story or in this package or whatever it is, and doing it on deadline. Once you get those two things down, this job, I won't say it's easy, but it's certainly easier, because those to me are the two hardest things to accomplish in this job.
All right, well, we are running out of time here, and I have two NFL questions about this season that I want to make sure we ask before I let you go. The first, we're going to make it New England Patriots themed, because this is New England Patriots territory. Yeah. Okay, so first question, Jacoby Brissett. He was named starting quarterback over Drake May, and as an unbiased reporter, what was your reaction to that? Because I think a lot of people around Patriots Nation were definitely a little upset by that. They wanted to see the new guy.
Well, we were actually on the air talking about it, and Mike Florio and I had a bet, and I said it's going to be Jacoby Brissett, and he said it's going to be Drake May. And the reason is, I think Drake May's ready. I don't think there's any question about that. I think the Patriots aren't ready for Drake May. And by that, I mean that offensive line is so porous. If you remember back, and this is probably before most people's time, but the Houston Texans made David Carr the number 1 overall pick. They threw him in as a rookie. They weren't ready for him. He might have been ready. We'll never know. But they gave up 76 sacks. He was sacked 76 times. He had no chance after that. He was scarred. He was done. We'll never know if he could have been a decent quarterback, because after that season, he was finished. I mean, you just can't take that many sacks and still have the head to do it. You're always thinking about getting hit. And so I think that's what they want to avoid by starting with Jacoby Brissett. Let's see how this offensive line holds up. Let's see how our receivers, what kind of separation they get. Let's see all those things before we just throw Drake May in there, who's ready for it, but maybe we're not ready for him. So this could be a challenging season for the Patriots either way. I like what they're doing. He'll be the starting quarterback at some point. He's going to get that experience this year. But let's take it slow with him and make sure that we're ready for him to be back there. We know he's ready. I mean, he showed that in the preseason. He was the better quarterback. There's no question about that.
If the offensive line does look good, when do you think would be the right time for him to make his debut?
Well, it's always after that bye week, I think, is kind of when you look at maybe changing quarterbacks, changing coaches, whatever you're thinking about doing. In the Patriots' case, is changing the quarterback. So maybe around that bye week. The question is Jacoby Brissett going to hold up long in this offense, getting his hit as much as he's probably going to get hit? We already saw the shoulder injury in the preseason. So it's got to be a case, and I saw Drake's quotes last week about I have to be ready. He has to be ready. he has to be a relief pitcher who's ready every single game to go in if Jacoby Brissett has an injury. So this could be sooner than later if that offensive line doesn't hold up. But I do think you look toward the bye week, kind of give a week. Hey, you sat and watched for a while. All right, it's your turn to go in there now. But if that offensive line holds up pretty well and they're still losing, then I think you're going to see this sooner than later.
All right, last question, then we'll let you go. What is your favorite NFL storyline coming into this season?
Oh, my goodness. I think it's probably Aaron Rodgers. Well, the Chiefs three-peat, obviously, never been done. And we want to see if the Chiefs can accomplish that, something that's never been done in the Super Bowl era. Can they win 3 in a row? And they certainly can with Patrick Mahomes. But there's a lot of contenders in the AFC, and one of those contenders is the New York Jets. And I want to see how Aaron Rodgers holds up. Only lasted 4 plays last season and then tore that Achilles. I want to see what he can do at his age. Can he still get it done? Is it still there? Can he hold up for the season? So I think those 2 things probably are what intrigue me more than anything heading into this season.
Well, Charean, first of all, thank you so much for coming on this show, but also just thank you so much for everything that you've done for women in sports. I know there were probably times for you that it wasn't easy, but you certainly made it easier for somebody like me. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for those kind words, probably more than I certainly deserve, but appreciate you and appreciate you guys having me on.
Hearing all of Charean's commentary about the NFL season to come, everything about Drake May, and just the storylines that she's excited about for this season, it really got me fired up. And it just kind of reminds you about like why the NFL is the most popular sport in the United States, because the characters are so good. The storylines are so good. It's like the best content every single fall and winter. And I'm curious for you, Annabelle, what was it like getting to listen to that interview after working your first NFL training camp?
Yeah, well, it's so crazy because I have been reading her articles every single day that I've been out here in Seattle. Part of my job is to basically clip anything that talks about the Seahawks every day, like right when it comes out. And so without knowing, I have been reading her NBC Sports articles every single day. It's like, Charean, all these things, and I'm copying and pasting all her articles, reading them. And then when I saw her name on our rundown, I was like, that looks really familiar. Like I've seen that before, but it's because I have just been going through all of her articles all the time because she's writing a lot about the Seahawks. So my first question is, how do you know all this information? Because she is spot on and she's not here. That's the part of her job that I'm like, how do you know these things? So
She's
trying
been
to figure
doing
that
it for
out.
30 years. She just has tons of institutional knowledge. It's like truly amazing.
True. So that was just cool for me. I was like, wow, this is really full circle to be able to have the opportunity to hear you talk to her and having read all of her work. It's truly impressive. And I think what was really cool for me just hearing that interview was how her passion and her career line up. She said something like, I've never worked a day in my life, or I felt like I've never worked a day in my life. And that's just really cool. And I think it's really true. And just to see in how she speaks and to also hear about studying the Cowboys and the passion that she had with that and how that ended up like helping her later in life when she's covering teams. Like it really is true. She has all that background knowledge, all the context of years and years and years before to kind of have a full understanding of the NFL and the Cowboys. Like just so cool. But yeah, loved that interview and loved hearing from her.
All right, well, we're going to stick with the NFL theme for wins of the week because my win of the week is that the NFL is back. It's Chiefs-Ravens tonight for Thursday Night Football, and you know what that means when the Chiefs are playing. Taylor Swift might be in the building. I do happen to be a Swiftie, so I'm looking out for that. I checked her tour schedule. I think she's next performing October 18th in Miami, so this is promising that she might get to be at a couple of games. I know Patrick Mahomes said that she's been drawing up some plays maybe, so maybe we'll even get to see a couple of Taylor Swift themed plays. Unlikely. I mean, but you know what? I'm not going to put anything past her.
She will make her way. Like, we know for a fact she will make her way into something football this year. That's not just being shown on the TV. Like, it's going to happen.
Yes, and you know what? I'm saying like, she's probably not drawing up plays. Like, how would she know how to do that? She's barely started watching football. You know, I wouldn't put anything past her. Like, she clearly has a extremely creative mind. I bet she could do it. And I was thinking too, like, wouldn't this be funny? You know, sometimes when like quarterbacks call the plays, like they say funny things, like they'll say funny names, whatever. I was like, man, like I would die if a team used Taylor Swift song names to call their plays.
Oh yeah,
like speak now, speak now.
I could see a defense using Taylor Swift themed words to just throw Travis Kelce off and to throw the Chiefs off. I could see it happening, you know, like there's got to be some type of chirping that's going on, but cheering them on, and obviously the Seahawks first and foremost.
Yes.
But go Taylor.
All right, what's your win?
It's obvious. Go Eagles. Roll Eags. That's
Go
my
Eagles.
win of the week. Like you said, this win can propel you through your week. This win has just given me so much joy, and so it has with the BC community. So go BC Eagles. Go Bill O'Brien. Football season is back.
All right, well, before we let you go, we need to give you a reminder that Noelle Lambert is competing in the Paralympics today, the day that this episode comes out. She's competing in the long jump at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then on September 7th, so this episode comes out on Thursday, then on Saturday, she's competing at 3 p.m. Eastern in the 100 meters. So definitely tune in to the Paralympics, support our friend of the pod, Noelle Lambert, and all the other Paralympians. And with that, we thank you for joining another episode of Respect Her Game, and we will see you guys next week. Go Eagles!
Woo! Go Eagles! Thank you for